Hey, welcome back to The Road to Here. Uh, this week's guest, or this episode's guest, I don't know. Hopefully it's going to be weekly, but is Mr. Adam Rohrer. And Adam is a friend of mine that I met through another podcast that I do. And he was gracious enough to give us his presence. So, Adam, introduce yourself.
Hi. First of all, thanks for having me. I really like what you're doing here with these past couple podcasts. I don't know. Is this just like
Thanks, man.
is this just an episode? Is this just going to be like a short term thing? Are you going to be doing different subjects?
Well,
I'm
I
just
don't know,
curious.
dude. Honestly, I started out, the idea was for this to be a mini series, right?
Yeah, that's
And
what I meant to say. Is this
yeah,
like a mini series? Okay.
and I don't know, man. I dig the format, and Dave and I were talking. He also digs the format, so this may continue into additional topics, but to be determined. Basically, is the short answer.
Cool. I love it. I just wanted to say
Thanks,
that.
man.
What was your question? Introduce myself.
Yeah, introduce yourself, Adam.
I am a 41-year-old bald Leo.
Girl,
I've
same.
been married for 19 years to my wife, Christina. We have three children, 11, 13, and almost 15. I'm a UPS delivery driver. I've been doing that my whole adult life, basically over 20 years. Um,
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks. Thank you. Um, on the side, I record and produce podcasts for another company. So I have nothing to do with the content, but I produce it, record it, and I enjoy making music also. And I play a lot of soccer, even in my old age. And I also coach soccer for my son's soccer team.
That's rad, man.
Yeah, dude, I love it. So I have like a lot of irons in the fire and just constantly busy. And if I ever want to do anything like this, it's always late at night.
Yeah. That's this is normally on the other podcasts I've done. We always record late as hell, right?
Yeah.
And by the time we're done, we're all drunk. And
I'm
but
purposefully not drinking, just so you know,
this
because
has
I've been
been
on your other podcast drunk and it
yeah,
doesn't always go
it was
well.
entertaining. I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know, maybe it didn't fit the vibe of this one, but it was a good time. I this is the first one I've done at night here, so it's cool. I've been podcasting during the day, so it's
Cool.
interesting. But man, let's get down to dude, you forgot the best part.
Oh man, I did. 2001 CCAC soccer champions also.
Damn
I mean,
right, man. That's a feat. That is
I
impressive.
don't like to brag right off the bat.
You can brag here.
Toot
It's
my own
okay, Adam.
horn.
You can brag here, bro. All right, man. So you know the drill. You were given questions beforehand, not as early as I would have liked. Sorry about that. But we're gonna go through your spiritual upbringing rather, and just tell us how it got you to where you are now. So just give us a basic rundown of your religious / spiritual upbringing.
Sure. Um, so I was born in Florida. My parents both grew up in Christian homes. They both went to a Christian college, and my they moved around a little. My dad's actually from where I live now in
Okay.
Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But when they met in college in Indiana, they started moving around following jobs for my dad, which
Hmm.
were either in the church or in Christian schools or something like that.
Okay.
So he's been a youth pastor, he's been a principal, he was my principal, he was also my
Really?
music teacher in kindergarten. um, so I was born in Florida. 2 years later, we moved to Virginia. Um, when I was
Kind of the
about
same thing.
Yeah, when I was about 10, we moved to where I live in Pennsylvania. I remember nothing about Florida. I remember very well Virginia. That was a lot of like my formative years. We went to a
Right.
Southern Baptist type of church.
Hmm.
And I consider Virginia like the line where you can still call it like Southern,
Right. Well, they
below the Mason Dixon
mhm,
line.
yeah.
um, so yeah, it
Robert E.
was
Lee
like
was from Virginia, buddy. It's all right.
boom, we claiming. Um, kind of typical. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what typical Southern Baptist churches are like, but even as a little kid, you're wearing like nice slacks and a dress shirt and tie, and very legalistic, lots of rules to follow inside of the church and outside of the church. And it was funny because when we moved to Pennsylvania, I was still the kid wearing dress pants and a button-up shirt and a tie, and that's I started getting made fun of because nobody else was doing that in Pennsylvania.
Like just in general, you wore button-up shirts?
No, just my parents made me to church.
Okay, I got you.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So you had to dress up to church. So and it was a typical, like, you go to church for 4 freaking hours on a Sunday morning and Sunday night, and then
Right.
Wednesday night. And I went to a Christian school, so my upbringing was
So it
all
was, yeah.
Christian, all Bible, all the time. Yeah, and I went to Christian school through
So
grade 12.
were you all in? Was this, did you find yourself fitting in to the culture, or were you questioning things, or?
I was definitely all in, like, because I had to be.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Was I questioning things? That's a question there. So I've been thinking about this because I've been listening to your episodes, and man, it like really made me think back and think hard. So I first of all, really love what you're doing. I think it's
Thanks, man.
really interesting and also kind of fun to like think about, why I believe what I believe. Where did that come from, and how my upbringing shaped that, all those kind of things.
Right.
What was the question? Was I all in? Yeah, no would be like the easy answer. I've like always had like a rebellious nature, which I think like I think it's a good thing. It gets you
For
into
sure.
trouble sometimes, but it also like naturally I question authority. Now that like it reveals itself in me like being mad at my HOA as a 41-year-old man.
Man, that
Dude, the first day we moved in, I got a letter from the HOA. First day, we don't like the color of your front door. It doesn't fit in with the other front doors. So I took that letter and I tore it up and I tossed it in the trash, just like I've done with all the rest of them that I've gotten since then.
Dude, all right. So that was one of the big things with my wife and I when we bought this house, right? We were like, I did not, because I grew up like, I don't know, man, borderline white trash. All right. So it was, we were the school that I went to, all my friends had like pit bulls on logging chains,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? And so I did not want an HOA. I was like, I'm not, that's not me. Like, I don't want to be told what I can do with the money, the property that I spent a shit ton of money for. But this place has a pool. So I was like, man,
Oh, that's
okay.
cool. I don't even
Yeah,
have a pool.
it's rad, dude. And honestly, like, they don't do anything. So it's nice. And now I find myself, I'm like, well, man, I wish that guy cleaned up his yard. Yeah. Like, what
You're one
happened?
of them now.
Yeah, what happened, dude?
It's funny. I've been. I'm gonna get into a lot of side diatribes here, so stop me anytime. But I've been like researching how we can overthrow the HOA, and legally, you only have to have 80% signatures to overthrow. So
really,
I'm talking to my next door neighbor. I'm like, how can we do
just
this?
start Viva la Resistance?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Start a revolution right here in my own neighborhood.
Yeah,
upper middle class, mostly white neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't know where you want to go from there.
Man, so you in high school, what was it like in a Christian high school? Because I went to public school. My whole life, I never, we didn't. I've said it ad nauseum. I didn't have a religious upbringing. So, what was your high school experience like?
Yeah. So my, usually Christian schools are small private schools there. So my graduating class was like 25 people.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of those kids, like I grew up with, we went all the way through, I started there when I was like 3rd or 4th grade. So some of these kids I've been in the same classroom as for, 10 years almost.
Right.
So much different experience than my kids are having in a very large public school where we live.
Yeah, that's what I grew up. I mean, my high school had like 2,800 students. Like my
Yeah,
graduating
yeah,
class was like 900. We had to
yeah,
rent out the local gymnasium at the university.
right. So I think that most schools, like the school that I went to, do not like prepare you for the real world.
Hmm.
Thankfully, I had like a lot of friends outside of the school and church in my neighborhood. And then when I got a job working at like a grocery store and stuff, I found some guys who I started a band with. So I
Right.
had like people outside of the Christian world. So I wasn't like, I mean, like, I always say that like Christian school kids are only like one step removed from homeschool kids. like,
But I mean,
like
what part of the real world now, the 41-year-old Adam, what part of the real world do you not feel like you were prepared for with the Christian school?
Uh, well, I mean, that's doesn't affect me anymore, but I've lived in the real world for, 25 years or whatever now. But just like they're sheltered, man. Like most of the parents of like my friends in my school, they all had the same rules about like listening to secular music and certain things that you weren't allowed to watch. And I did that stuff anyway. I just had to hide it. So like it
Right.
it made like this it naturally like made me feel like I was always doing something wrong when looking back like that stuff isn't inherently wrong, you know?
Was that exciting? Because I mean, I know, you know, my media wasn't. I mean, not at all. My media was not
Right,
censored at all for my parents. Like I listened to Marilyn Manson,
right.
and I had the T-shirt that had the little three guys that said in it on the back. It said, "You might as well kill yourself. You're already dead."
Marilyn
And
Manson was like one of like the the big
yeah,
ones where we had to like stay away from.
but my mom was so cool. Like I let her hear "Sweet Dreams," and she started singing it, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Marilyn Manson. I had no idea that it was
Right,
a
right.
cover
It's a
song. You know what
cover
I mean?
song.
Yeah, but do you feel like that changed you at all as far as being the sneaky part? Like did that make you feel bad? Were you guilty for that, or was it something that was kind of cool? Because I always my rebelliousness in high school was weed. You know what I mean? And I always
Yeah,
felt
I
like
mean,
I
like,
was
also, like,
sneaking.
some of that was my rebelliousness also, like,
Right.
smoking cigarettes with my friends in the woods and, blowing people's mailboxes up and, just
Right.
stupid shit that kids do. Um, yeah, it was exciting, like, I didn't feel guilty about that stuff at all.
Nice.
There were other things that I felt guilty about, like, that are as common,
Like what?
like sexual repression, first of all, which
Mm,
is a huge thing in the church. I still made out with my girlfriend and
yeah.
all that shit, but like it messes you up, man, when you're like growing up and your hormones are crazy and you
Mhm.
think that like this thing that's natural that you're feeling, like, you don't know how to think anyway when you're a teenager. Like I know
Yeah,
I
that's
have teenagers now.
right.
They're crazy and I see it from all their friends and everything. But like just to think that like even like these thoughts that you're having is like you're sinning, you're doing something
Mhm.
wrong. Like that was like imprinted in my brain. And so like I didn't know how not to do these things and I was doing these things. So like so when you're asking about like the media I consumed and stuff, when I didn't feel guilty about that, I was feeling guilty about other things for
Mhm.
sure.
I've noticed from doing this and just the people that I've talked to over the years, like that is a very common thread. My mother grew up Catholic, and she talked a lot about guilt because it's very guilt centric.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, why?
Why?
Because everyone feels guilty, and everyone that I have watched or talked to always mentions, you know, being racked with guilt with doing normal things. I mean, you're 16 years old. You're supposed to be wanting to make out with your significant other or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I
I
don't
mean,
understand.
like part of it, as I'm thinking about it, like when we're kids, like I learned this having kids. Like kids don't know anything.
Mhm.
Like you teach them things, and like they're fully impressionable. So like when my kids were young, I could tell them anything, and they were going to believe it. So like when you're learning these things constantly, especially like I was in church and Christian school, hearing all these things, And so like that was just like what my worldview was. Like I didn't know that like it was silly, some of it, and
Right.
that like it was okay to kiss my girlfriend. That is not a sexual immorality or whatever.
Right.
Things like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of it is just like manipulation as far as like the guilt goes. Like
Hmm.
kids don't know any better to not feel guilty because they actually think that like these things are wrong. And it's pretty like black and white when you're a child.
Right. So I mean, what is is it a scriptural thing? Are they saying that as far as the immorality, like how do they frame it?
Yeah, there's stuff in the scriptures that talk about sexual immorality, and they abuse those scriptures constantly, and always stuff is always taken out of context, but yeah, they frame it as if it's a sin. um
Right.
yeah,
Now I'm going off the reservation here, off
yeah, just
topic,
keep
but
keep going. I mean,
how do
if I don't
you
have an answer, I'll simply say I don't know. How about
right.
that?
How do you
I'll be honest.
feel how do you feel about the Bible now? Because that's something that I have
How
heavily
do I feel about the
researched
Bible?
recently
Yeah,
and I'm curious.
good question. That was not in your
It was not.
list of questions.
It
Thank
was
you.
not, man. Surprise.
How do I feel about the Bible now? I don't feel negatively towards the Bible like I do the church and Christians, other Christians. um, I think that it's a good guidebook. It cannot be taken literally. Absolutely not. The whole Bible cannot be taken literally. I think we know that. That feels like common sense,
A
even
lot
though
of people don't know
a lot
that.
of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Feels like common sense. Um, it's honestly like not something that so like I consider myself a Christian still
Mhm.
to this day. Um, but it's not something that I like willingly pick up regularly to just read. Um,
Mhm. So how much were you taught
mm.
about the history of the Bible in
A
school?
lot. I mean,
A lot, yeah.
that was a lot of it. I mean, I had a Bible class that was like, we had a history class and we had a science class and we had all that, but I had a class that was Bible, and a lot of that was like history. Um,
I had a lot of
and
fun with that, man. Like I went to a Christian university and I
I heard that on the other pod. Man, that blew me away that you went to Liberty
yeah, I went
University,
to
dude.
Liberty, man.
Blows
Like
me away.
and I loved apologetics, man. I really did. And it talked a lot about that. I mean, did they get deep into that as far as, when the Bible was canonized and, looking at it now, I'm like, man, like that,
No, they did
it
not get into that. I mean, just to answer your question quickly.
right.
Um, like every other class in every other school, that depends on your teacher. And like, if your teacher is lazy and doesn't teach you this thing, like, then but I will say that I went to a Bible college for one semester right after high school.
Mhm,
And in that you have Old Testament history, you have a hermeneutics class, so that is like hardcore deep
mhm.
into the Bible. But at that point, I was Bibled out. So, like, I understand your fascination with it. And had I not spent like the previous 18 years, like
Right.
surrounded by it, I may as well like have been also fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by other things similarly, like you're saying, but
Right.
unfortunately not the Bible.
So at this point, you grew up, you have an evangelical background. Do
Yes.
you feel the need now to evangelize your faith?
And the short answer is no, I don't. But like that was such a huge part of my upbringing.
Mhm,
I mean, even like as little kids, they're talking about how you need to like tell your friends about Jesus so
mhm.
that they don't go to hell. So like I was like a shy kid, so that was like so terrifying to me. But I did that. I remember times like my neighbor across the street who was my friend, he was Catholic. And
Mhm.
like we were alone in my basement, we were like looking at baseball cards or something, and I started talking to him. I was like, "Oh, maybe this is my chance to tell him about Jesus." And I did, and I remember exactly what he said. He said, okay. He's like, can I do this and still be Catholic? Because like his family was like pretty hardcore
Right.
Catholic. And I was like, shit, I have no idea. I'm like 10 years old. I don't
Yeah.
know. But
Yes. Yeah.
I said, that's exactly what that was exactly my answer. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like with no, you know, sincerity at all. I was just like, yes, you can. So you know, he did that and he said that prayer, and I was like so excited. And I told my parents, and they were excited for me. But like that feels like such manipulation looking back at it to like,
Mm,
I
I don't think
mean,
that's fair, man. Like
wait,
you're
why? I'm curious why you say that.
I don't I mean, as far as you manipulating him, I don't think so.
No, no, no. I meant I don't mean that. I meant I meant like my parents and the church manipulating children
Oh, for sure. Like
to do
it's
those things.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I was not manipulating him because that was not my intent at all. I wouldn't
right.
even know what that is at that age. I truly believed that I was saving this kid from hell.
Having gone to an evangelical Southern Baptist church, it is 100% indoctrination
Yeah,
of the children. And I was actually involved when we went to that church. I was involved in the children's ministry, and it is 100% indoctrination. Those kids don't know shit about shit. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And I see it now with my son because we have family that are still pretty hardcore evangelicals, and he comes home and he's 8, and he comes home talking about that stuff when he goes to their house. I'm like, buddy, lots of people believe lots of different things, and
yeah,
I mean, I honestly don't know how to relay that to him. You know what I mean? Because
right.
I don't know that I have a faith. I mean, if anything, I'm Buddhist, but I don't particularly practice a specific discipline or tradition or anything.
Hmm, hmm.
But so, do you? Where are you now, spiritually speaking?
Can I go back to your last question?
Sure.
I'm just thinking more on it, like if I feel the need to evangelize,
Uh-huh.
just because like that was such a huge part of my life, like from the age of like 4 to like 18. I
Yeah.
would go on like missions trips where that was like the sole purpose. I did a trip to New York City one time, and it was with a group from my school, and it was because I was musical, like we did like songs and
Right.
played guitar and sang, and there was a missionary that lived in New York City, and we stayed with him, and he would like take us around. We'd set up a stage on like the street and
Wow.
like sing these songs, the purpose to like draw kids in to like evangelize to them. And like we would do that, and like these young kids would like come up, and we'd like talk to them and like coax them into like saying these things, and that was the goal. And then like
How old were you?
I was probably like 14 or something, somewhere around there. I mean, I was a teenager by that point. But I remember then we like set up on Wall Street, and we just got
Place needs Jesus.
heckled oh fuck you, there is no God. So like you're like,
Golly, man.
I look back
New
at that
Yorkers,
and
man.
I'm like you're like sending the lamb to the slaughter when you're like
Right.
telling kids. And I was 14, but I was still a kid, you know, I didn't have a
Yeah,
fully
man.
developed brain by that point. And like the idea of evangelizing is just like I constantly think about this because like, well, first of all, my sister is a missionary in
Mm,
Colombia, Medellin, Colombia, like Pablo Escobar country.
right.
Um, and she would say that God called her and her family to pick up and move there because nobody else will tell those kids about God.
Right.
And like I like it's really an interesting dynamic with my family because like I would say no, he didn't. God did not tell you to pick up your stuff and move your family to Colombia. The fact is that like life wasn't going well for her here.
Right.
Um like, you know, her husband had a job, it wasn't a good job, he didn't like it. They lived in a bad part of town. And like that's always the case when I see like people being called into the ministry or into like
Right.
into the mission field. Um, There's this, I was just thinking about this. There's this documentary on Hulu called The Mission. Do you know this story? It's brand new on Hulu.
No, no, no.
You probably know, you might know the story. It only happened like a few years ago. There was this kid. Well, he's not a kid. He's probably like, he was in college. His name was John Chow.
Mm-hmm.
He told people that God called him to make contact with this tribe of people that were off the coast of India.
Dude, I know. Okay. Yeah.
They were called like the Sentinelese or something like that. And it, first of all, it was illegal because this tribe of people has never been touched by the modern world. Nobody has ever stepped foot on that island. It's like one of the only tribes in the world that we know it still exists like that,
Right.
where nobody has touched foot there.
Right.
Like it's illegal because like if I went there and they caught my cold, they would all die
Right.
basically because they've never
Yeah.
experienced that. So this guy told everybody that God was calling him to do this. He figured out a way, even though it's highly illegal and really hard to get there. He like hired a guy to drive him on a boat to get
Mhm.
there. And like once he was in reach, he got shot by an arrow. They shot him and killed him instantly.
Mm.
So I remember when that story happened, I had this conversation with my sister. Like, do you think that God, like, just like curious, what do you think? This guy said that God called him to do that. Do you think that God called him only to be shot dead instantly? That doesn't make sense to me. And her response is like, well, if God calls, you go. And I was like, okay, I just like there's a disconnect there that like I no longer can like wrap my head around. I don't know. Like
No, I get it, man. Like when I was trying really hard to be in the church, and I knew that I just didn't get it. Like I did not believe it. The whole, I knew that in my heart. Like I tried, I figured, well, if I go and learn apologetics, like I'm going to understand more about the Bible. And I did. And I still was like, and so I turned to Calvinism. I thought, well, this makes sense. Like I'm just, I just don't get it. But there's so much you can't
can I
reconcile.
ask you why? What about Calvinism was appealing?
Just it made sense to me because right, if God is omnipresent, then he knows what happens. Like there is some people are, he every path is laid out, right? Like there is no free will. I never understood because they talked a lot about free will in
Like that's
the
like
Southern
the
Baptist
like
Church.
total apt opposite of like the way that I feel. Just sorry to butt in there.
No,
But
no,
like,
no, no. But it made sense to me because I felt like true omnipresence is omnipresence and
sure.
is God knows what is going to happen before you know it, right? Like it's laid out for you, and that's how I reconciled my feelings because I knew that I didn't believe it. I was like, well, maybe I'm just not supposed to believe it. Like,
Yeah,
and
that's so interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
and that was a
I
lot.
like hearing that because sorry to keep interrupting you.
No, 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 no.
I like hearing that just because like you grew up very differently than me. So
Mhm.
like that makes sense that would make sense to you.
Mhm. It
You
was
know, if
hard,
you're
man.
searching for something.
Yes, and I knew that I wasn't buying what they were selling. Like I knew that. And that was the only way that I could reconcile it and still be involved. And then and that's kind of what sent me down the path. Well, this shit ain't right. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah.
is not.
Yeah.
And there was a break in there because of mental illness and everything else before I started really exploring spirituality again. And it was hard for me because I truly, I don't know if I've ever really said this out loud, but I truly at one point felt like I just wasn't one of the ones, you know what I mean? Like I was like,
Yeah.
shit, like well, here we go. Like, yeah, and that and for someone who's already predisposed to an epic level of self-loathing, that is, that's a lot, man, because it seems silly now, but
That's the
then,
ultimate diss. You were like
yeah,
one of the ones who was not
like,
chosen.
damn, I can't even do this right. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm alone there, but that's kind of
No,
that's kind of
I'm
where I
sure you're
came from
not,
on
to
that.
be
Yeah.
honest. It's actually really interesting hearing you say that, just because like Calvin, I've always had the view of Calvinism coming from my background as a Christian, and like it totally bucks free will. And even to this day, how I feel about Christianity and God, like free will is everything.
But is free will scriptural?
I don't know, but I already told you how I feel about the Bible.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But I'm seeing, if you're basing, if you're basing your approach to the faith from that book, it's not. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
In my
understand.
opinion. And that was hard for me to reconcile when I was really learning about it. I was like, well, this doesn't say anything about it. What they're saying is not in here.
Yeah,
And that was hard for me.
I get it. Yeah, it's just interesting to hear it. I've like never heard it from that vantage point before.
So how do you approach spirituality with your kids? Are you and your spouse on the same page? What what do you tell them when they ask questions?
Yeah, it's like such a good question. Um, just like some of the religious trauma growing up, like I don't know. I've always had the viewpoint. Well, first of all, like I remember my parents at the age that I'm at. I'm 41. I
Mhm.
remember my parents really well when they were that age. So like you think that your
Right.
parents know what they're doing and they have it all together and they're teaching exactly the right thing, and then you learn like ain't nobody knows shit, right?
Right.
We're all like winging it when it comes to children
Mhm.
and raising children. That's
We're
one
all
thing
winging
I've
it,
learned.
period, dude.
Yes,
One of the
just in
best
general.
one of the best quotes I've ever heard and has really stuck with me is forgive your parents, they were learning too.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so good. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry, continue.
Um, I knew that like I knew what not to do, like based on like my upbringing and the things that I know didn't work that my parents did. Um, but in the same way, like I feel like, and this isn't just like spiritually speaking, but like I feel like we're all fixing the things of the generation before us, but we're just fucking our kids up in other ways probably, and we won't know until they're older and they tell us how we done wrong.
Right,
And then it's just generational and they'll fix those problems and do different things
right,
wrong. That being said, how do I approach that stuff with my kids?
right.
I knew for a fact that like cramming what I believe down their throat is absolutely the wrong way to do this. Um,
Agreed.
so they also kind of grew up in the church because there was a long period where we didn't go to church, but that was like before at least two of the three of them were born.
Mhm.
Um, so we've been going to the same church since then. Um, like, I'm lucky if we get there once a month anymore,
Right.
but I would say that like eh, I'm saying I'm going to speak for myself. I
Mhm.
still like fully believe in the mission of this church.
Mhm.
My church is fully affirming, uh, which like that's a deal breaker for me. If a church is like being gay is a sin, like that's number one deal breaker. I'm just not going to attend. That's
Right.
crazy shit. Um, so that being said, like the church that I would say that I go to aligns with my beliefs. So
Right.
I don't feel like I feel like the things that they are hearing are correct, like
Mhm.
for the most part, I guess. Um, there's also like my wife also is just awesome with this. Like she was a catalyst to a lot of like how we deal with our kids and a lot of things, not just
Right.
spirituality, but like how do we talk to them about sex? How do we talk to them about all these crazy things that they're going to learn in school and they're going to have to figure out on their own? And like a lot of it is like open door policy, open conversation, the complete opposite of how I grew up. I hid everything from my parents.
Right.
Everything, even stuff I probably didn't have to hide. I just like that was like what I learned that I should do, or at least I felt like I should do.
Why?
Let's put it that way. It's like it's because of the Christian background. I felt like I would disappoint them because I know that like they would feel like some of the stuff was wrong. I don't know. Like I just didn't have a great relationship with my parents in that way. And so like we've kind of fostered this relationship with our children. We're like we want you to tell us everything and we talk to them about everything. And like my wife has this amazing relationship with my daughter where like she literally tells her everything.
Right.
Like things with about boyfriends, like her first kiss and stuff. She's told
Right.
like stuff like I never told my parents. My parents like didn't know anything. And like I think that that's a healthy way to go about it, because I can tell you from my experience, I did whatever I wanted to do regardless of what they knew or not. So like,
Girl, same.
yeah. So it's like we can, is it not like better for us to be able to walk them through these things healthily? Um and yeah, I don't know. This is a relationship that we foster, I think, is like, to me, it feels like the right way to go about it. And it kind of like ties in, like, if we're talking about spirituality, how do I deal with that with my kids? I don't know. Like, I think we're kind of leading by example in that way. Like, my
Mhm.
kids, like, they pray to God, which, like, I've never told them, like, hey, you need to pray to God. And, like, I don't think that they're like hardcore interested in like learning about the Bible and about God, and I think that's okay. I think that they're good kids and they're doing a good job at life, and I think that like partially we got lucky. Like our kids are good. Like
Mm.
there's this nature versus nurture thing. We're trying to do like as well as we can with the nurture part, but like sometimes people are who they are and maybe we just got lucky. I don't know. Like it's
No,
just
man.
like like you're asking these questions and you're asking wonderful thought provoking questions, but like realistically, like I can share with you my experiences, but like I don't think there's right answers to all this stuff either. Like
No, that's the whole point, dude.
how do you approach spirituality with your children? I don't know. I know the way that it was approached with me when I was a kid was horrible because
Right?
it like fucked me up and like it made me feel a certain way about Christianity and the Bible that I didn't necessarily need to feel.
I don't know. I think if you felt it, then you needed to feel it. I
Sure.
really believe that. And you know, I personally, as a father, I have also have 3 children, and the older 2, yeah, my older 2 are 18 and 17, then I have an 8-year-old son. And dude, I've never talked with them about it. And still, even to this day, like they know that I have read a lot of Buddhism. They know that I enjoy Buddhist philosophy. One of them actually subscribes to my TikTok, so she sees a lot of the philosophical ramblings that I do, and
Yeah.
that's cool. But honestly, like I've never sat down with them and talked to them about God or about anything. And I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm letting them down sometimes. I don't know.
No, I think it's like I'm thinking about this from what you're telling me. Like they know what you believe, likely. Maybe not like,
Right.
specifics, but like I think that like when we're teenagers, there's things that like we want to say, but like we don't.
Right.
Because relationships with your parents are awkward no matter what.
That's true.
Regardless of how I
That's so
say
true, dude.
I
It
have a
is
great
still awkward.
relation. Yeah, dude. Like I can say I have a great relationship with my kids, but like there's things that are awkward to talk about. And like, I don't know, man. Like you're a good dude. And I'm sure that like I can also say, like, for me, like, there's things I keep talking shit about my parents. I also love my parents a lot, and I have a very good
Right.
relationship with them now, despite our differences and beliefs and whatever. And I can look back on like some of the things they did right and like really appreciate those things. And like these are things that I would have never said to them as a teenager, but
So how do you feel now that your faith has helped you be a better person? It doesn't not in any specific area, just overall. Do you feel like your faith and your Christianity makes you a better human?
um well, it's funny. First of all, like you sent me these questions ahead of time, and I really did like go over them and like had thoughts and stuff written down. But like as you're asking me these questions, like it's not that I'm forgetting the things. It's like I really want to like ponder them. I don't know.
No,
Um,
ponder. That's what hey man, this is free form, buddy. You can ponder all you want.
so the question was, how do I think my faith? Ask the question again, please.
How has your faith helped you be a better human being? How has what the lessons you've learned in Christianity and the experiences you've had, how, if at all, have they helped you be a better person?
Um, hmm. So like I could say that like the Bible is like a good like moral compass, to use as like a guidebook. If you not everything in the Bible, but like if you could say like I want to be like Jesus, and these like that's a pretty
Right.
good like guideline.
Well,
Because
of
like
course.
how Jesus was in the Bible is pretty cool. Like there's a lot of weird shit in the Bible that's hard to like,
Well, there's a lot
decipher,
of
but
there's a lot of stuff we don't get. I think a lot of it because we don't understand the cultural norms of the time. D-
exactly. And that's like what I say. We have no idea what their lives were like and what was normal. You're totally right.
Do you listen to? There's a guy named Dan McClellan. Are you familiar? Does that name ring a
No,
bell?
I know who that is. I don't listen. No.
You should.
Okay.
He's a Mormon cat. Like he's works for the church, but he is a biblical scholar, and he really breaks down everything. And there's so much that I didn't know, and I just learned from him that uh, the authors of the specific books or whatever at the time were speaking out against things that they saw happening in the culture. You see what I'm saying? That there were events that were taking place that they were like, this is not in, this doesn't jive with the teaching. Like this is, and now taken out of context, it's like, what the hell are they talking about? But he does a really great job. And if he's on YouTube, TikTok, all that stuff, man, and he really opened a lot up for me
Yeah.
in that. So I recommend highly.
Cool. Cool. Um, Going back to the question, I would say like I don't know if like it's like made me be a better person. I think honestly like the the bad parts of it have like looking at it in the opposite way have like made me not do those things, which
Right.
in turn has made me a better person, has made me live my life better. I keep thinking about you had sent me another question, and I'm just going to bring it up here, but
Yeah.
you had said if dogma was erased, where would morality come from? And I keep
Mhm.
going back to that question because like I think it makes sense here. I think that like I truly believe that we are inherently good, that man is inherently good. And like there's so many different caveats to that, like, the environment and all these things. Do you know who Carl Rogers is? He was a
Mm-mm.
psychologist like
No,
in
no.
the early 1900s. Uh, but if you would like read some of his work, he calls it actualized tendency.
Mhm.
And it's like this innate drive to grow and to change and to like strive towards fulfillment or like actualization or even happiness. But
Mhm.
like I've heard it described like trying to like gather my thoughts. I've heard it described like a seed. Like if a seed could think for itself, like its
Mhm.
actualization would be to be a big like beautiful flower, right? But
Right.
the environment is a key part of that outcome. So like it needs good soil and it needs plenty of water and sunlight and everything.
Mm.
So like there's so many different factors so that like that make us become actualized, fully grown humans. But I think that like all this would lead me to believe that we are like inherently good.
I
So like
agree.
where would my morality come from? Like how would does my faith make me a good person? I don't know. I think that like we're inherently good. I mean, we can talk about like all the people who are evil, but like you could also talk about the environment that they lived in, or the fact that they have a chemical imbalance in their head, or a number of different things.
Here's the thing that's always stood out to me with that, right? And there undoubtedly are people who have done evil, terrible things. that I'm not trying to dispute that. If you take the concept that we are created in the image of God, which is not exclusive to Christianity, that appears in a lot of faiths, that or vice versa when you get into Hinduism and everything else. Like we'll get into that in a minute, but I feel like if you really zoom out and you look at Old Testament God, all right, you look at wrathful God, flooded the earth, killed men, women, children, everybody. They don't talk about that in the Noah's Ark story in Sunday school. You know what I mean? Like he wiped it out, right?
Hmm.
And which one could argue that's a relatively evil act, in my opinion, from someone who doesn't have, a Christian upbringing. And then you look at Christ, who was by definition the same person. So you have both ends of the spectrum, right? And you're getting into hermetics and polarity and whatever. But if we are created in the image of God and God did both of those things, he healed the sick, he raised the dead, but he also erased the entire population. I mean, we are also both of those things. We are capable of both of those things. And I think it's a matter of choice or, like you said, circumstance or whatever that leads us in the direction that we go. Now, I don't know what bearing that has on what you were saying, but that is how I try to look at it.
No,
And, and
I like that. It makes sense. I don't know. Like I don't know. It's such an interesting question. Like morality in general, where does it come
Mhm.
from? Why are some people better than others? And I
Look
don't
at
know. I
kids.
just
I
like,
mean, kids will fight each other and take each other's toys, but they will also, when one of them's hurt, they also hug. You know what I mean? They'll
yeah.
go and hug another little kid, and I think that's, like you said, it's just everywhere. It comes from your environment. I think it comes from your nature. I think you're right. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Cool. I'll take it. I'll take
Yeah.
it.
All right. So we're gonna move on into my favorite part of these podcasts, and we're going to move into the weird shit. Okay, we're going to get weird. Let's get weird at them.
I'll try.
So I have been on a journey as of late. All right, I have been reading a lot of different things, and some of it is completely wackadoodle, and some of it is all right. But okay, how do you feel about the concept of non-dualism? Do you feel like something like that is plausible?
Um, so I'm just gonna be honest. I think that I know what it is.
Okay.
Uh, give me a brief definition.
Okay, non-dualism is present in a lot of Eastern religion, a lot of Taoism, Hinduism, a lot of Buddhism. Buddhism is different in that there's really not, as I
Before you go on, let me just tell you what I kind of think it is. So
okay, yeah,
to
yeah,
see if I'm like close. So I think that it's like there is no separation between like man and God.
bingo.
Okay.
You are there is it is not good dualism being you have your sky wizard sitting above you in judgment and dictating what happens here, right? Non-dualism being that it's all kind of the same thing and we are all pieces of the same we're
Yeah.
yeah, the same entity or whatever.
Is it plausible? What do I feel about it?
Like I know
Yeah,
it's
I
definitely
don't know.
different.
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know. I can't actually wrap my head around it because like I've never like truly thought about it. I'll be
Okay.
honest.
All right.
Like the idea of us being like the same thing. There's no separation.
It's
I don't know.
foreign. It's definitely foreign to us in the West, especially coming from a Christian or any of the Abrahamic faith. It is complete. Yeah, it's something totally different.
What are your thoughts on it? Maybe you've already shared those. I don't know. Like in
No, I
small.
don't think I have, man. I have pretty much personally abandoned any sort of dualistic ideals. Like I feel I am on the non-dualism train, as they say. it just makes the most sense to me, man. I feel like I am personally a believer in reincarnation. I think
Mhm.
that we do this over and over and over, and I feel like some people are at different stages. And to me, that has been the best explanation to the vast difference in behavior of human beings. And I don't know. I always gravitated towards these kind of thoughts, and I never really had a vocabulary to express it until I really broke down. Like I've been on a Hindu kick lately, and Hinduism is everything,
Mhm.
man. It's just basically you are the exclusivity that you find in a lot of Christianity is not there. You know what I mean? Like it is everything. It can be whatever you want it to be. And as long as you are thinking spiritually and trying to become one with God or commune with God or whatever, as long as you're on a spiritual path, it's right. It is, and I feel like if you zoom out, man, all these religions are kind of saying the same thing. And I have said that before on this podcast. Like the dogma is different, the specifics are different, of course, but the overall arcing message is the same. Love your neighbor and don't be an asshole. I mean, yeah, to make it super simple, be kind, be good, do for those that are in a position that can't do for themselves. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like that is a common thing, and I don't think personally, I do not feel like that's a coincidence. It's and you've got people from all over the world in different time periods that all are pushing towards the same goal, essentially. But it just looks different, and I feel like we are Christian because this is a Christian area, and had you and I been born in Iran or Japan or anywhere else, you know what I mean? It's geographical, man.
Yeah,
It's
I can agree with that.
so I mean, I definitely consider myself a non-dualist to answer your question in
Okay.
a complete long and drawn out way.
It's interesting. So, like, growing up in, like, a Christian church and a Christian like, ideas of, like, philosophical questions, they're never talked about. They're never asked. So, like, these places where your brain, like, wants to go when you're a little kid, like, the idea of, like, the expanse of the universe and how big it is, or, like, if you believe in a heaven, the idea of living forever, like, you think as a kid, like, "Wow, that's scary." Like, what does forever actually mean?
Right.
And, like, just, like, ideas like that, they're, like, pushed down. Like, they're not
Well, of
you're not
course they are.
encouraged to think about these things, like, like, in my,
I have a
my
theory.
house and church growing up. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a theory. I feel like that a lot of that is a holdover from the point where the church ruled the world. Because so if you trace it back, you have Christianity today, you have the Bible as it is now because the Catholic Church said so.
Mhm.
You have, and at that point when you start adding power in with, you when you're using religion to control a population of wildly uneducated and uh, desperate population, you're going to bend things to how you want them so they benefit the mission, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And I feel like a lot of that, the lack of these kind of thoughts is because of that, because there were things like, have you ever read the Apocrypha?
No.
So there's do you know are you familiar with the term, like what I'm talking
Yes,
about?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, I know what you mean.
So I mean that was stuff that was just carved out. That prior to that had been canon.
Yeah,
Prior to that was part of the Bible, and the cat was like, "Eh." And if you read the book of Enoch, bro, that shit is wild. You think Revelations is wild? Read that.
yeah,
But it,
go ahead.
no, no. I mean, I feel like that's a big reason for what you were saying. It's not you're not allowed to think like that because then you're like you're going to step out of line. And I don't know, not saying that the mission of the current church is nefarious and that they're all about, blah, 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 blah. I'm not dogging the church, man. I'm saying that I think a lot of that is a holdover from when the church controlled everything.
Yeah. Like, just like thinking about one thing I've been doing, like in my adult life, especially like the last 10 years or so, just like pondering these philosophical questions. And what I like about Buddhism is that they talk about these things a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, obviously there's a fundamental difference there in that, Christianity is like monotheistic where Buddhism is not.
Well,
But
Buddhism doesn't talk about a deity at all. Like
right.
if you look at when they asked the Buddha
Yeah,
after this
what I meant to
lesson,
say is like they're non-theistic. They don't talk about it.
it's about you, and it's about,
Yeah.
it doesn't, because we can't, I mean, truly, we can't know the answer to those questions, to these questions that we have about God and how God behaves and why God does what he does. We don't know, because, and it's all speculation. It's all because if you believe it, you don't know it. You know what I mean? And if you know,
Mhm.
like, something, you don't have to believe it because
Right.
there's evidence. And regardless, I think, of any upbringing or where you come from or what you say, there is no evidence of anything metaphysical on
Mhm.
Earth. And I personally, I feel like that's intentional, but that's a whole, we're getting into Maya and the whole, that whole thing. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I've just been thinking about like the, you know, philosophy a lot.
Mhm,
And mainly that comes from like some Buddhist like things that I read.
mhm,
Um, one thing that I like really latched on to was like this universal truth that they believe that everything is impermanent and always changing. And that's like something that I've always said that about myself, that like if I look at myself 5 years down the road and I'm exactly where I was and I believe exactly the same thing, then I probably failed. You're not
yeah,
learning, you're not growing. Like I want there to constantly be like a death of my old self and like a rebirth.
there is.
Right.
Yeah, and you break it down to, and they break it down in Buddhism, like even the cells in your body change moment by moment. So nothing ever stays the same. And I feel like that concept has given me more peace than anything, man, is knowing that, what, it's gonna, you enjoy what's happening now because it's gonna be different.
Yeah.
People are gonna die, things are gonna change, circumstances, the whole thing.
Do you know this book? Have you heard of this book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
No,
Oh,
that's
it's
all.
like this famous book from like the 70s. And
Yeah.
my sister-in-law recommended it like years ago, and I read it twice since, but it's like a semi-fictional autobiography of this guy, Robert Pirsig.
Mm.
And like it's like not at all a guide to Buddhism or anything, but like he explores a lot of philosophical ideas and questions. And like the whole story is like he goes on this long distance motorcycle ride with his son, and there like a lot of it is about him like fixing. He's very like good mechanically minded, and he
Mhm.
can like fix his motorcycle, and he's an old motorcycle, so it always breaks down. So a lot of it is like the difference between rationality and romanticism, or like
Right.
science and art, and like how they can coexist. And like these aren't, I don't know, these aren't new ideas. Like Nietzsche was writing about these things like long before the 1970s, but I don't know. There's just things that I've been reading and interested in lately.
Are you familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh?
No.
He's a Vietnamese monk and author, and he wrote a book called Living Buddha, Living Christ. And if you're interested in merging the
Oh,
two
interesting.
worlds,
Yeah, that's interesting.
because according to him, you can totally merge the two things because they're completely different. They are
Mhm.
not the same, and you are not, like, when I mention. It's funny. We went on a cruise with the family, and I mentioned a Buddhist parable to my mother-in-law. And have you ever heard the parable of the blind man and the elephant?
I don't know.
They
Say it. Maybe.
they
I'm not
they
sure.
lead 6 blind men to an elephant, and they start feeling different parts of the elephant, and one feels the legs and said, "Well, this is a tree." One feels the
Mhm.
tail, said, "This is a rope." And, one feels the side of the elephant, says this is a wall. But the point being that, it's a matter of perspective. Like we're all looking at the same thing and we're all touching the same thing. It's just where you're at is how
Right.
you see it. And I was
Right.
telling her about that story and that parable, and she just immediately like shut down. I was like, I don't believe in false gods. Like, well,
What does that have
neither
to do with anything?
neither do I. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah,
not,
neither do
like,
I.
yeah.
That's
but
interesting.
but
Yeah,
it's you should check out that book, man, if you're at all
I will.
interested in Buddhism. It's pretty cool.
I should have brought up this book when we were talking about morality, but the latest book I read is it's called shoot, what is it called? It's do you know who Mike Shore is?
Mm-mm.
He was a writer and creator of like The Office and Parks and Rec
Okay.
and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's
Yeah.
so this book like comes from a place like a place of comedy, but it's called How to Be Perfect, the correct answer to every moral question. And so
Right.
like obviously that's a little tongue in cheek, but like he like
Yeah.
actually tackles like questions of morality in like a funny way. And I think like the summary of the book would be like morality can't require more of us than we are able to give, which I think is so interesting. Like and I think he's talking about things like my iPhone or this computer that I'm on obviously was built by some kind of slave labor or something. Like should I then throw away these things? And like really no, I can't like live my life without these things and the culture that I live in.
Hmm.
So it's just like a really interesting take on morality and how we can like categorize these things in our head. Like for instance, I don't know, I was just thinking about this recently. I have a friend and I saw recently on Instagram, she went on this long like diatribe about how the NFL is terrible
Right.
because there's athletes in the NFL who have, beat their wives and sexual assault cases, things like that.
Right.
And so she said that we should all she's like I can't speak for you, but I'm going to boycott the NFL and I think that you should too. And in reality, like boycotting the NFL costs her nothing cuz she doesn't watch football.
Right.
But like I know that she's a huge fan of cinema and she has like Oscar parties and things like
Hmm.
that and like reality is probably just as many people and those like actors are doing the
Oh,
same things, right?
right.
I don't know. It's just like an interesting moral question. And I don't know, if you want something else to read, it's an easy, entertaining read.
Yeah, I'll check that out. So I got a big one here, man. I
Oh
got a
boy.
big one. What is consciousness?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that question. Um, I think it's like they've done like studies on lots of studies on
Mhm.
consciousness, and like my short answer would be like if the most brilliant neuroscientists in the world can't figure this out, then I'm not going to figure it out.
We take opinions on this
But
podcast.
like it's experience, right? It's like my experience. How
How
else do
so?
you like put it into words? I don't know. That's like something that like that's another one of those things as a kid that like you think about. Like who am I? Like what is this thing that I'm living? Like I see through these eyes, but like other people see me as somebody else. It's bizarre, right?
You should really
It's
look into Buddhism, Adam.
it's crazy, right?
I'm telling you, bro. You were tap
Explain
dancing
it to
all
me like I'm 5
you
is
were
how I'll
tap
have to
dancing
tell you.
all around it, brother. Like,
I know, it's just, like, so interesting. I don't know. And then, like, I mean, I think you've talked a little bit about, like, dreams and stuff, but, like, what the fuck happens when we fall asleep and we dream?
depends on who you ask.
Right,
You
like,
can get weird, like into the weeds,
even when I
and
was a kid, like, I've always said, like, isn't it weird that, like, our bodies shut down like a freaking, like, robot or a computer for, like, half of our lives or a third of our
Mhm.
lives or whatever, and then, like, we don't have any idea what happens, and we have these thoughts and dreams, and usually I don't know about you, but, like, my dreams are crazy. When I remember my dreams, they're super vivid and they're super crazy.
See,
And usually it has nothing to do with anything that happens in my everyday life.
I take medicine because of PTSD, where I don't have a lot of dreams because of the nightmares. But I have
Do you mean like what kind of medicine?
I
It's
take
like
a
stuff that knocks you out, you mean?
no. I take a medicine called prazosin, which by design is a blood pressure medication.
Okay.
But they have found in very low doses that it lowers the norepinephrine in the brain and prevents you from it. It kind of kicks you out of the fight or flight uh, mentality, and therefore allows you to completely shut down and rest. And for whatever reason, now I don't know the science behind it specifically, but dude, it was like flipping the damn switch. Like I don't dream about anything, but I have found that I can reintroduce dreaming by taking melatonin, and so
Oh,
far it has not backfired.
that's like that doesn't even make sense, but that's interesting.
Melatonin has always, and I don't know if it's something in the neural pathways or something with the mental illness or whatever it is, but
Well,
melatonin has
melatonin is like natural too.
right, but whatever when you introduce more of it, uh, to for me when I take a supplement, it has always made me dream, and it has always made me dream very vividly.
So there was a point in my life, like only a few years ago, where like I have never had a problem falling asleep. Like I can
Mhm.
just fall. My wife is not the same. I can fall asleep like just like that.
Right.
But I would wake up 30 times throughout the night,
Mhm.
or I'd wake up and I couldn't get back to sleep. So like life was miserable, dude. When you
Huh?
like are not sleeping well, it affects everything.
Oh, dude,
And I think that I just truly believe that there's more to it, just like that your body needs rest. I think that there's something mental about it. I don't know. But like since then, I have to drug myself to sleep. And I will do that for the rest of my life because I sleep freaking awesome. And like it truly like makes me a different person. Like when you
yeah, I
sleep
mean,
through.
you work as many hours as I do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like I work 60 hours a week, and I got one of the fancy Nancy CPAP machines, right?
Mm.
And that made a big difference in the
Oh,
quality of
really?
sleep. But yeah, this isn't a CPAP podcast, but I do recommend it.
You should start one of those. You should start a
Yeah,
people
let's
podcast.
talk about CPAP. Yeah, which nasal cushion do you prefer?
Yeah.
Um,
But I don't know. When we're talking about dreams, I don't know. Are you
so
do
some
you wanna go ahead.
there's uh, a lot of thought, in some of the fringe circles, especially some of the shit that I read, that dreams are a different dimension. That
Yep.
it's just consciousness shifts into a different place because of the physical needs of the meat suit. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
like I said, if you want to get into the woo woo weeds, we can. That is something that I have considered, and I don't know that I am totally against personally.
So I was listening to your podcast with Eric,
Hmm.
and he was talking about, uh I'm blanking on what it's called, or sleep paralysis.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, like, I also have, like, studied into sleep paralysis because I have experienced it myself, and when Eric was talking about it, I was like my mouth was open because it is the exact experience that I had.
Hmm.
Everything from like the whooshing in the ears to like the heaviness on the chest to the demonic presence.
Hmm.
And like the way that he described it, I would push back personally. It's just like a belief that I have. But like I understand that like the things that are happening can be explained by like things that are firing in your brain.
Hmm.
And it's like because everybody has this very very similar experience and can explain it like the exact same way, that like people just assume that it's something that's happening in all of our brain the exact same way, that
Hmm.
whoever has a sleep paralysis. But like one thing that he said that like really struck me, that Eric said, he said that like he can time when he had those dreams with like when he was losing his faith. And because he was saying, I think what he was saying was that he was having them before and after, like right
Hmm.
around that time. So because of that, he was saying that had nothing to do spiritually. It was just like neurons that were misfiring or whatever was happening
Right.
in your brain. Whereas, like for me, super maybe coincidentally, but like I had these really vivid, terrifying sleep paralysis events right around the time when I was also losing my faith as a young adult, very
Mhm.
specific time in my life. And so, like, it could be explained the way that he explained it, maybe, but also, like, I truly believe there is another realm, maybe spiritual realm or something that is something beyond what we can access, like, naturally.
Right. And we're learning more from a quantum perspective and how things behave and where things are. And the I'm gonna send you. I mentioned it with Morgan. I don't know if you listen to the podcast with Morgan, but
I did,
I
yeah.
mentioned the emergence theory for the layperson, and I'm gonna send you that video. And it's very scientific. It's very talks about layer. Basically, the dimensions are layered, and this creator I follow named Casey, she got me onto this, and I have been unable to shake it. I'm hoping to get her on the show. I think she's coming on, and she's awesome, and the way the stuff that she thinks about is pretty rad. But
That's awesome. I just want to say one other thing quick, because as we're on this subject, um, as I'm thinking about like a spiritual realm, I think that like that is, well, I know that that's like a big reason why I still believe that there is a God. And like without going into like extreme detail, just because it's like a super personal experience that I had. Like I was at a point of this specific event, I was at a point in my life where like desperate to like not kill myself basically. Like
mhm,
it was I was a young adult. I had essentially, like lost my faith, didn't understand like where I was going, what I was doing. Uh and I can say that I saw something with my own eyes in a place where like this thing should not be, as I was like essentially like crying out to God.
mhm,
And this is something I would where I fully believe I was not hallucinating. I've never hallucinated before or after. I was fully sober. So like I make fun of like times that people say they hear from God and like experience these kind of things, but like I mean there's things that are inexplainable that have happened in my life that I can
mhm.
like I think you know me well enough to know that I'm not like a liar or a completely crazy. So like I'm
Right,
telling you that like I fully believe that I saw something, and it can only be explained that it was put there in my mind. It can only be explained that like it was put there by God because I was in a place of extreme desperation. I don't know.
right. Man, I uh, I believe that. I believe I don't. Yeah.
And I will say that like thinking back on that, like it has made me rethink how I view mystics and like especially when you're talking about like
Mhm,
in spirituality and
mhm,
you talk about like even in the Bible like there's like the stories of people would fast and
mhm,
and there's stories of that throughout history like fasting like maybe that is a situation where because you are depriving your body of food that the rest of your senses are so heightened that like
mhm.
you can almost experience things that you could not experience otherwise. I don't know. There's there's so much that we could get into there, but it's just like I've talked about like my Christian journey, and that is such a huge part that I didn't mention. I feel like that
Right.
that needs to be said because like that and one of the things that you had asked me before, like how did how has like spirituality or Christianity or however you worded it, like how did that help me like heal from trauma or something? I forget how you
Mhm.
worded it. But there's also like experiences that I've had in my life where like, I mean, I'll just go into it a little bit, but like we had a fourth child and he died at 1 day old. And like I've never, give me a second. I've never been able to talk about it without crying. So like I just don't talk about it. But like holding a child that dies in your arms, there's like there's I mean, I truly believe there's no greater pain that man can feel. And then it makes me think, it makes me think about people who experience this with children that they've actually grown to know, and like they become a person. So like anyway, just like through that experience that my wife and I had to go through, like the only way that like I could move on with life is just like seeing my other children, knowing that I had to like somehow be responsible for continuing to allow them to live a safe and healthy life, but also like feeling like almost literally feeling like the embrace of a God, of like comfort and love. I mean, sorry,
Okay.
I cry about once a year, so when it comes, it really
Right.
comes.
You
But like these experiences are like cannot be explained any other way, and I just like refuse. Like, people can debate anything that I say, and like I can tell you that like these experiences are so real to me. I refuse to believe there's any other way to explain them than that. Like it leads me to believe that I have to believe that there's a God.
I first of all, I am incredibly sorry that that happened to you.
And it was like just so you know, it was 7 or 8 years ago now, and
Right.
like the pain of that, like
I
I've never healed from it, and like I don't
no,
think I ever will. But
no,
like,
you won't, man. My mom, I never talked about this. My mother lost a child before me that made it to like 21 days old, and she's never recovered. She's
yeah,
in her 60s. I I don't. You're not wrong. Like I don't think.
that's the thing. Like I know that I'm not wrong. I'm right,
Right.
but I also understand that like, well, this is yeah, I don't know. This is another direction to take this, but like, oh God, I don't want to say the phrase "living my truth" because I hate that phrase so badly. I hate it. And like that goes into, you asked Morgan, I think it was, you asked him the question, like, is truth objective or something, is something like
Right.
that, right? And like that phrase just kills me. But like in this experience, like, I mean, right now, what I know is that like I don't know shit, right? Like I know that I've had these experiences that lead me to believe that there is a God.
Hmm.
But I also know that you didn't have my experiences and the other person didn't have my experience. So like, how can I then tell you that like there is in fact for sure definitely a God?
I think that's not the point, man. I think the point is that those experiences are God. Those experiences are
Not this non-dualist shit again.
no, I know it is, man, because you look out like you are not that experience is not exclusive to you. There are people in other parts of the world that believe totally different things that have experienced the same exact phenomenon. There has to be.
Yeah.
And are those people wrong? And you're right. I just that was my beef, for lack of a better term, with the whole thing.
Yeah, and while I despise the phrase "live your truth" or "I'm living my truth" or whatever, like one thing that is I think is super damaging is that people who are complete absolutists
Yeah.
saying that this way is the only way, I'm right 100%, you're wrong 100%, is completely black and white. Um, I one thing that I think I found that is like super healthy, like in my spiritual journey, is that just being okay saying, I don't know, like I have no idea. And there's so much that I know. I don't know so much more than I know.
Dude,
And that'll probably
you
always be the case.
you are describing Buddhism. Like, I'm telling you, you gotta read on it. You gotta read on it, bro.
Yeah.
It,
Have you ever heard of the Tao of Pooh?
yeah, not the Tao of Poo. No, like
Okay, so it's the Tao of Pooh as in Winnie the Pooh.
okay, that's what I was
And
wondering.
it
That was my
yeah,
next
and
question.
it's and it's like it basically like it's like a super beginner's guide to like Taoism, but it like
Right.
talks about like how Pooh was like actually a Taoist, his life of simplicity, and I don't know, it's really
All
funny,
right.
but it
Yeah.
reminds me of that. And there's also a follow-up book called The Chi of Piglet, if you're interested.
Oh yeah, I am. I'm very interested.
Dude, Pooh was like a modern day philosopher. He ruled, man.
Dude, so let me throw this at you. And Dave, the other host of this show, and I have been friends for a long time, and we talk about this. And I think he and I are on the same page. And let me just throw this at you and see what you think. This was not on the list, by the way. There are schools of thought and beliefs that all these so Christ, Krishna, uh, Buddha, Muhammad, like all these people are a slice of the same pie. The same the consciousness that exists and the message that these people brought are the same thing. And this is kind of what I gravitate towards as far as a belief system, I guess, because it makes sense to me in that it's the same message packaged different ways so that people of different cultures can get the same. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the point is the same. The point is the point. And all the dogma and stuff, we complicate things. That's just what we do. We overcomplicate shit because we don't know. So we fill in the gaps of, oh shit, I'm scared. I don't know, with dogma and
Mhm.
interpretations
Mhm.
and thoughts and educated guesses. But the reality of the situation is that it's all the same. And none of us know, regardless of where you're at or what you're doing or what part of the world you live in. Nobody knows. So we're just all kind of floating and trying the best. And I think
Mhm.
that itself is what leads me to believe that we are here to learn these things, to have these experiences that we're having to, I don't know, improve or whatever, however you want to phrase it. We're here to learn. We're here to experience. And that is the point of life, in my opinion. So, and rewind that and the thought that it's all kind of the same, that these were the
Mhm.
same people or a version of the same person. What do you think about that?
I've heard this before, and
There may be a
like,
name for it. I don't know, but
yeah, it I mean, makes sense. Like
right,
I like I told you, like I don't know. I don't know what I don't know,
right,
and like, uh, Yeah, I don't know. Like I always think like, I mean, life is this way for a reason, but like if you could ask God or shake a magic 8 ball or whatever and know for a certain fact that like what you ask, the answer like is the truth, you know, where do I go when I die? Is there an afterlife? You know, just these like these these existential questions that like we can't possibly ever know the truth. We're never going to know until it
Right.
happens, right?
Hmm.
I don't know. Like I think about like what would it be like if you could, but like that's not. Well, I don't even like know how to put this into words, but like these things are mysteries for a reason. Just like I've always said that like God, the God that I believe in, is mysterious for a reason.
Hmm.
Because if I could understand that, like it, the being, like then he wouldn't be God and I wouldn't be me. You know,
Right.
like these things are like not understandable by our puny little brains for a reason. And like we're having these conversations and I love it because like I said, like I grew up not knowing that I could even have these conversations, right? But I don't know. So good on you for asking these questions and you know, guiding these conversations.
What this is the last one, and you already kind of touched on it. But what happens after we die? Is it streets of gold and angels? And because I'm gonna be honest with you, that shit sounds kind of boring, man.
Yeah. Um yeah, that's one of the things that I'm like being at peace. That's another part of it, just like allowing myself to be at peace not knowing these things has been so super like healthy for me.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things that I just can't say, like, and that's is super anti-Christianity because like, you know, the great commission in the Bible, Jesus stood on a mountain in Galilee and said go and preach the gospel and baptize all nations, and that was the purpose of life so that you could save them from eternal damnation, right? One
Hmm.
thing I to tell you for sure is that I refuse to believe that there is a hell, that the God that I told you that I've
Right.
experienced would allow me to burn in a lake of fire just because I my life experience doesn't allow me to believe in him or whatever. Like I just refuse to believe that. So is
Same.
there then a heaven? I don't know. Like I don't know. Who knows? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I don't
Like
know
there's
either, Adam. It's
I
okay.
would I'd love to like believe that I'll meet my son in heaven, but like who knows? Like and heaven might not be what I've been told that it is either. You
Right.
just it might be some sort of reincarnation where we all meet as dandelions in a field or who knows.
Dude,
And maybe that is exactly what we want at that time. I don't know.
I mentioned this book to Morgan called Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. And man, I recommend you reading it. And it's total new age, like
You got
fun.
to send a list of all this
Yeah, I'm
stuff you
going to, man.
recommend because
I'm
I'm
going
I'm
to, man.
interested.
Like, but that book is so much fun. And like I said, if nothing else, it is fantastic fiction. Have you ever seen the Disney movie Soul?
Yeah, it's
That
great.
it, I really feel like
Talking about like talk about other dimensions and stuff, right?
yeah, but that is the premise of that book,
Yeah.
through hypnosis, yada yada yada. But you get there and that is like home base. Like that's where you're at, like it is. And that follows basically every other tradition or most traditions, especially the Abrahamic traditions. Like you have a true nature and this isn't it. You have a home and this isn't home. When you die, you go home, right? That's
Hmm.
been, dumbing it down, but still it's fun. And
It's
I
cool.
had a lot of blast with those. I had a blast with those books. Now the later on, he wrote 3 or 4 more, and they get like turned into like a technical manual, and there's you know crystals involved, and it gets weird. But the
Yeah,
first
there's
the
so
first
much
two
like
were a lot of fun.
okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that like I can say is that I have all this like baggage that like provides this mental block that doesn't even like truly allow me to like sometimes fully like think these thoughts and ponder these ideas. But like I will say that one thing that I've taken with me that like is a constant throughout Christianity and the Bible is forgiveness. Like forgiving myself first of all, and just like those in my past who like I felt have wronged me in my spiritual journey, because realistically, like regardless of intention, like they probably thought that they were doing what was best. And
Right.
so like just allowing myself to let all of that go has been like super healthy for me. And like I don't know, it's just like I'm not like super angry at like the church and Christians as a lot of my friends are who like live
That's it.
similar experiences.
That kind of led me to this series, was noticing that, man. Like seeing the pain. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of people pissed off. And it's cool that I don't know, that you figured out a way through that. So I think it's pretty natural when
Yeah,
but I personally, like, I think you need to keep going the way you're going, man. I think if you continue to allow yourself, and that was one thing that I started doing when I got treatment, is I started to allow myself to really get into these questions, and it's opened a lot of shit up for me. So
yeah,
I recommend you continue going down that path. Oh, man, I am out of questions. I got
cool.
nothing else. I mean, I got a lot else. I got a lot more, but
I think we've been going like an hour and a half. I
yeah,
think that's like pretty solid.
1 hour
People are
and
probably
34
sick
minutes,
of
52 seconds.
hearing me now.
So at this time in the whole situation or the episode or whatever, man, this is I give you an opportunity to plug anything that you do or anything you'd like to plug.
Plug. I released an album last year. Was that
Hmm.
last? Yeah, it's been a year almost. It's called The Pig Merchants. That is the name of my band. It's just me and my one friend. And
Your only friend.
yeah, my only friend. Who's a Buddhist, by the way, so you would like him.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, we had played a lot of music like 10 years ago. We did a lot of, we played out live a lot of different places, and we hadn't done anything for 10 years. And we got together, had a conversation. We're like, let's make an album. So he wrote half the songs, I wrote half the songs, I recorded everything. We played all of the instruments. Yeah,
Hell
it's on
yeah.
Spotify and everywhere you get music.
I'm a fan
Um,
of it personally. I listened to it the other day.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
called 6 Feet Up. That's the newest one. The last one is from like 12 years ago. So that's on there too.
Yeah.
Um, what else? So I produce and record a podcast called The Behaviorist.
Mhm.
It's very niche. It's like about workplace behaviors and helping leaders lead effectively. And if you want to like support me, just go and like follow it. You don't even have to listen or give it a 5-star review or something.
All right, I will do. I'll be
Yeah.
damned if I
Yeah.
listen. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. You don't have to listen or
Well, Adam,
listen. I don't care.
Adam, man, thank you for being here. It's it's been. Whew, I need a beer.
A little journey. So do I. I was
Yeah,
thinking about
yeah,
drinking while I was on this, but then I was like, I'll get tired. So now I'm gonna go drink.
yeah,
Um, yeah, thank you, man. Like I said, like I've been on a lot of other people's podcasts, and usually we're talking shit and talking about dicks and farts and whatnot.
yeah. That's
And
usually
this
how I
wasn't
roll.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I honestly like appreciate that you're facilitating these conversations. It's like, I don't know, maybe other people are having these conversations all the time, but like I said, I had like 20 years of like baggage that provides mental blocks that I'm just now like allowing myself to like ponder some of these questions.
Well, dude, I'm gonna say this. Maybe I should say it off here. I don't know, but you have my phone number, and this is literally all I fucking do. Like, I ride around in a garbage
Yeah.
truck all day thinking about this shit and listening to audiobooks and podcasts and YouTube videos, and I talk to my big hippie homesteader buddy that hosts the show. This is the shit that we talk about on the way to work in the morning. So
Nice.
you are not alone, and you may call me at any time, and we can philosophize.
Yeah, I may do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But all right, guys. So thank you so much for listening. This has been another incredible conversation. I've got more coming. It's this whole thing has been super eye opening. It's amazing. But yeah, check us out, Sharing Maps Podcast. We are streaming everywhere that things stream. We are on YouTube. All this stuff will be up on YouTube. Give us a sub, give us a follow, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. But yeah, we'll see you soon.
Peace.